The Merlot was decanted, breathing beside a crisp white envelope. That in itself wasn't strange. Elaine Carter had received thank you gifts before, but this one sat in the center of the granite countertop, like a carefully staged photo. No fingerprints, no smudge on the label. A note written in Camille's precise, looped cursive. For your quiet evenings. Thank you for everything, Elaine. The word everything echoed. Elaine stared at the bottle, still wearing the cardigan she used to pick up the twins from school. The sleeves were slightly frayed, but she'd always preferred fabric with memory. The kitchen smelled faintly of citrus and bleach, the usual scent cocktail Camille left behind before any guest, even family, entered her spotless space. She didn't drink the wine, not that night. Instead, she stood at the edge of the kitchen, watching the Nest thermostat blink to life as if greeting her. Welcome, Elaine, Alexa chimed. The same greeting she'd heard every day since moving in 6 months ago, when Trent and Camille insisted it would be easier for everyone after her minor fall at the old house. But easier for whom? That night, she went to her guest room being a generous term. It was a converted study, furnished with a pull-out sofa, a sterile white rug, and one minimalist art print that looked like a barcode. She folded the Merlot note in half and placed it inside her crossword puzzle book. When she turned off the lamp, a small red light blinked in the corner of the ceiling. At first, she thought it was part of the smoke detector, but then she remembered they had replaced all detectors last month, and the blink wasn't the slow pulse of a safety device. It was rhythmic, mechanical, watching. She sat up in bed, staring at the light. Her breath caught. It had been years since she'd felt this watched, and the last time had been at a school board meeting where a colleague tried to discredit her report on a principal's misconduct. She knew what surveillance felt like. It prickled. It wrapped around you like humidity, invisible and inescapable. The next morning, she didn't mention it. Instead, she made breakfast, eggs and toast, and packed the kids' lunches like usual. Camille had flown out early for a wellness retreat in Sedona. Trent followed shortly after, suitcase in hand, wearing the new blazer she'd helped him pick for his promotion. Just water the plants and maybe check the mail if you're up for it, he said, kissing her cheek. And don't stress. We trust you. Trust. That word settled like dust on her tongue. Once the house was empty, silence poured in. Elaine walked the perimeter slowly, tea in hand, trying to name the feeling sitting behind her ribs. It wasn't fear, it was unease, refined, sharpened by time. She opened the hallway closet and caught her own reflection in the mirror inside. Her face, weathered but calm. Eyes that had once scanned hundreds of student files with a glance. She hadn't lost her intuition. She'd just been told for years that she was overreacting. Her fingers found the light switch. But as she stepped back, a soft click echoed from above. She froze, looked up. There, near the hallway speaker grill, another black dot, barely noticeable. She spent the next 3 hours searching, one disguised in the bookshelf's fake spine, another in a thermostat, one behind a diffuser in the guest bath. The worst was the motion detector in the living room, which rotated, slowly, like it knew she was there. She didn't cry, not then. Instead, she reached for her old habit, notes, observations, a pen from the junk drawer and a half-used grocery list pad. Living room, camera rotates, guest bath, blinking light behind diffuser. Hallway, ceiling grill, likely mic. Guest room, overhead 4 blinks per second. The pattern was clinical, precise. She had entered a system. That evening, she found the envelope again, reopened it. Thank you for everything, it said. She now understood what everything meant, her movements, her mutterings, her solitude, and she began to wonder, what were they collecting it all for? At 10:43 p.m., while searching the family desktop in the locked office, which Camille had accidentally left unlocked, Elaine found a folder labeled Project Matriarch. Inside were files tagged with phrases like crying kitchen, mutters self, and mirror stare. A short video loaded automatically. It showed her from 3 days ago, seated in the armchair, rubbing her temples. No sound, just footage. She felt like a lab rat, or worse, a story someone else was trying to write. The door creaked open behind her. She froze, but it was only the automated hallway light turning off. Still, her heart wouldn't slow. That night, she didn't sleep in the guest room. She dragged a blanket into the laundry room and curled on the tile floor. It was cold and awkward, but no blinking lights, no mirrored lenses. In the dark, Elaine whispered to herself, "They didn't give you a home. They gave you a set." The next morning, she opened a Gmail draft and typed, "To John Kramer, RE, urgent. Need to talk. Surveilled in family residence. Possible violation of data privacy. Investment documentation attached." She didn't send it yet, but she saved it. Then she walked into the garden, turned on the hose, and began watering the roses one by one. As she stood under the early sunlight, a glint caught her eye. Another camera. Mounted under the eave, pointed at the lawn. She looked straight at it and smiled. Not kindly, not warmly, but deliberately. If you've ever been overlooked despite doing everything right, type 1. I see you. I do. Elaine Carter was sipping lukewarm tea by the kitchen window when her email pinged. The subject line read, "Proposal Reminder, Matriarch Content Series, Initial Draft Ready for Feedback." At first, she thought it was spam, a misrouted marketing email, but as she opened it, her breath caught. The sender wasn't a stranger, it was Camille, from her work email. Elaine's hands trembled slightly as she clicked the attached PDF. The cover page was clean and polished. Portrait of the Forgotten Matriarch, a passive character study in modern domestic surveillance for internal pitch only. All footage proprietary. There, in the second paragraph, her name appeared. Elaine C. Carter, observed subject. She felt the room tilt. She placed the mug down before it shattered. So, it was never about trust. Never about family. She hadn't been living in a home. She'd been staged inside a behavioral thesis wrapped in Wi-Fi, LED lights, and pastel kitchen tiles. Hours passed like fog. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She pulled out her old USB drive, the one with family photos from the Cape, and began copying every file she could find from the home computer. Footage folders, labeled screenshots, project outlines. One file caught her attention, a video clip labeled mirrorsequence.mp4. She played it. It was her, standing in front of the bathroom mirror, one hand brushing back silver hair, the other holding her reading glasses. She looked tired, unaware, almost hollow. She paused the video, then pressed play again. In the background of the video, Camille's voice, from a previously recorded video call. Honestly, she's fascinating to watch. She talks to herself, straight up narrates her loneliness. I know it sounds awful, but from a brand perspective, it's raw content. Vulnerability sells now. She doesn't even know we're recording, so it's organic. Another woman on the call laughed. You could totally pitch this to Cradle or maybe Soft Frame TV. This is elder empathy gold. Elder, empathy, gold. Elaine's stomach turned. She reached for a notebook and scribbled a note. This wasn't documentation. This was exploitation. That evening, she waited until the motion lights stopped flickering. Then, one by one, she used painter's tape to cover the tiny black dots on every device. She draped a shawl over the digital frame in the living room, unplugged the speaker hub. The house grew quieter, not just in sound, but in presence. She entered the office again. This time, she looked beyond just the files, into the drawers. She found binders labeled Client Pilots and Private Tests. One form made her fingers go cold. Data Consent Authorization, Pilot Subject Household, Elaine Carter. Signed, Camille Carter. Subject waived direct consent under implied co-residency terms. Implied consent? That's what they were calling it now? There was also a signed NDA with a small streaming platform based in Seattle. Underlined, elder behavior, privacy themes, soft conflict storytelling. She wasn't just being studied, she was being packaged. When Trent called that night to check in, she answered with deliberate calm. "Everything's fine," she said. "The roses are blooming." She waited a beat, then added, "You might want to check your work email. Something flagged from Camille's pitch deck." Silence. Then, "What?" She didn't elaborate. She wanted him to feel it. The beginning of suspicion. The next day, she got a message from Carla, a young woman who used to intern at Camille's agency. She'd seen Elaine's name in a folder called Legacy Metrics. Carla wrote, "I left last month after realizing what they were doing. There's a whole analytics project built around home behavior footage, testing micro-emotion triggers for brand targeting. You're not the only subject." Elaine sat with that. Let it settle like dust on her skin. She replied, "Would you be willing to speak to someone legally if this becomes bigger?" Carla's answer came within a minute. "Yes, I have copies too." By sunset, Elaine had printed 3 stills from the surveillance footage. One of her asleep, one crying, one watering the garden barefoot. She wrote a short note. "You filmed me without my consent. You analyzed my pain. You don't get to spin me into empathy bait. You've mistaken stillness for silence, and silence for permission." She slid the photos and letter into a manila envelope, mailed it to herself, certified, and took a photo of the package with the tracking number. It wasn't just symbolism, it was legal timestamp. Then she walked into the camera's view in the hallway and paused deliberately, looked straight up. "You always wanted content, Camille," she whispered. "Then make sure you keep rolling. If you've ever had your privacy stolen in the name of someone else's success, type 2. You're not overreacting." That night, she found one final folder hidden deep in Camille's external drive. Test, subject, forward plan, .mp4. She clicked it, and Camille's voice came through. "If she finds out, we'll say it was for her own protection. And if she pushes, well, the footage makes her look unstable anyway." Elaine sat back slowly. Her fingers didn't tremble this time. They clenched. Elaine's phone buzzed twice. First a notification from her bank, then an alert from her Dropbox. She didn't expect either. She clicked the bank app first. Wire transfer initiated. $50,000 to Camille Carter Productions, LLC. Her stomach turned. That was her transfer, the one she had made 5 years ago to help them with the down payment. Camille had just moved it, reclassified it, labeled it as a business contribution. She switched to Dropbox. The second shock landed harder. A new folder titled Emergency Plan Elaine. Inside, mock legal templates, psychiatric referral letters with her name, even a backup video labeled Erratic Behavior Compilation. Elaine sank into the armchair, every inch of her skin suddenly burning. She had known she was being watched. She hadn't realized they were building a defense strategy against her. She didn't hesitate. She called John Kramer, the former attorney and friend she hadn't spoken to in years. He answered on the second ring. His voice was steady, warm. "Elaine Carter," he said, like it was 2006, and she was reporting a bullying case at the school board. "What do you need?" She didn't sugarcoat it. She told him about the cameras, the reclassified bank transfer, the footage folders, the proposed streaming deal. She used words like exploitation, digital manipulation, coercion, and, finally, retaliation. John went quiet for a long beat. Then, "We can start with ownership." "Ownership of what?" she asked. "Of your contribution. If there's no written contract, we argue it was equity, not a gift. And if they try to declare it otherwise, we go through the emails." "Camille ever thank you for investing in the family?" Elaine nodded slowly. That exact phrase, actually, in 2 different emails. "That's your leverage," John said. "That and the footage. And you don't need to burn the house down. Just show them you own part of the foundation." Elaine spent the next 2 days documenting everything. A spreadsheet of all surveillance points she'd discovered. Printed stills of herself, labeled by Camille's system. 3 emails from 2018 and 2019 where Camille referred to her support helping secure our future. The Dropbox folder, screen recorded and saved. She packaged it all in a thumb drive and sent a secure copy to John. The rest she stored on a private drive, encrypted, and uploaded to a cloud account only she could access. But as Elaine prepared her legal counter, a new face entered the picture. Carla, the former intern, texted again, this time with a screenshot from a Slack conversation inside Camille's branding firm. Camille's testing emotional segmentation models, using Elaine's footage. There's even a heat map AI model measuring her facial expressions, live. Elaine read the message twice, her jaw clenched. They weren't just watching her, they were profiling her. She replied, "Would you speak on record?" Carla sent a voice memo in response. "I already downloaded the files. If you need to go public or legal, I'm in. This has gone too far." Elaine closed her eyes. It was no longer just about the wine or the cameras. This was systemic violation, a calculated erasure of her boundaries, justified in the name of data and content. That evening, Trent came home alone. Camille was at a client retreat, conveniently offline. He found Elaine in the kitchen, casually baking cornbread, the kind he loved as a kid. "Hey," he said, shifting awkwardly. "Smells good." She didn't respond. He cleared his throat. "Camille mentioned you might be upset about some project folders. Look, Mom, I know you're feeling a bit." Elaine turned slowly. Her voice was calm, but razor sharp. "Don't you dare reduce this to feelings." Trent's eyebrows furrowed. "I didn't mean it like that. I didn't know the cameras were still active." "You helped install them," she said. "Don't pretend your silence wasn't participation." He didn't deny it. "It was for safety." She stepped closer. "Then explain the footage files labeled by emotion. Explain the psychiatric plan. Explain the financial reclassification of my gift." "I didn't know she—" "Did you ask?" Elaine interrupted. "Or did you enjoy how quietly I folded into your life?" There was a long, raw silence. The oven timer beeped. Elaine turned away first. "Dinner will be ready in 20 minutes. You can eat here or not." Trent sat down quietly. The next morning, she placed a sealed envelope on the kitchen island. Inside, John's legal proposal, demand for repayment or a formal equity stake, a cease and desist order on personal image use, documentation of surveillance and breach of privacy, testimony from Carla, notice of potential escalation to media if terms were ignored. She left a sticky note on top. "These are the terms of being useful. I no longer accept them." That night, she stood in front of the hallway mirror. The red light no longer blinked. It had been taped over, but she looked anyway, straight into the lens, because habit was hard to kill. Then she said clearly, "You filmed my obedience. Now film my exit." If you've ever given everything and still been used, type 3, you're not alone. Camille returned the next day. She didn't say hello, just opened the envelope, read it in silence, then looked up at Elaine and said, "This isn't a negotiation. You're family." Elaine smiled, small and cold. "No, I was footage." Elaine opened the envelope from the attorney's office expecting confirmation of her case filing. Instead, the shock came in the form of a counter letter, one drafted by Camille's firm. "We acknowledge the family support Ms. Carter provided in 2018, but reaffirm that said contribution was gifted voluntarily and carries no binding legal obligation. Additionally, any footage recorded within the home falls under ambient data collection, which the subject implicitly consented to through shared residence. A psychiatric referral may be issued should continued behavior raise wellness concerns." Elaine read it 3 times. She wasn't just being gaslit. She was being institutionally erased. Camille had gone from branding her as content to now labeling her as unstable. In print, in legal language, with cold, bureaucratic phrasing designed to strip her of credibility and personhood. She folded the letter slowly and set it on the counter. Then she walked into the hallway and stared up at the last camera she hadn't covered. "This ends now," she whispered. The next morning, she met with John Kramer on a secured video call. His jaw tightened as he read the document. "She's trying to discredit you before this goes public," he said flatly. "This clause here, wellness concern, it's legal sleight of hand, meant to preemptively position you as irrational." Elaine's voice was calm. "Can we counter it?" "Yes, and we will. We'll amend our filing to include defamation risk, breach of fiduciary ethics, and coercive surveillance. He paused, then asked, "Do you still have the Carla testimony and the Slack screenshots?" Elaine nodded. "Everything's backed up." John leaned forward. "Then we go forward." Elaine spent the next day packing, not chaotically, but methodically. A few cardigans, her collection of books, the photo of Michael and the boys at Cape Cod, the mug with the chipped rim. Not much, but enough. She emailed Carla to thank her again and offered to connect her with another legal contact if retaliation happened on her end. Carla replied, "They don't scare me anymore. You gave me language to stand up." That single sentence stayed with Elaine longer than she expected. That evening, Trent knocked on the guest room door. His voice was low. "Can we talk?" She opened it. He looked worn, like someone who'd finally read every line in a contract he should have questioned years ago. "I didn't know about the letter," he began. "Camille sent it without telling me." Elaine studied him. "But you signed it." "I was told it was procedural." "Then you didn't read it." He looked away. Elaine stepped aside to let him in. He sat on the bed, folding his hands like a boy about to be scolded. "Mom, I didn't think it would ever get this far." "That's because you never thought I'd fight back." Silence stretched. He stared at the floor. "I thought you were okay with how things were. That maybe you preferred quiet." "I didn't prefer it. I was surviving it." Her voice cracked, just slightly. "And now I'm done surviving." The next day, Camille returned from her retreat. She didn't speak to Elaine, not directly, but Elaine could feel the performance, the pacing in the kitchen, the phone calls deliberately loud, the stage silence whenever Elaine entered the room. That night, Camille left a new envelope on Elaine's pillow. Inside was a check. $30,000. No note, no explanation. Elaine placed it in the shredder. On the morning of her departure, Elaine wore the same navy sweater she'd worn the day she met with the school board over the ethics scandal 20 years earlier, her "Don't Push Me" sweater. She walked through the house one last time, draped a scarf over the last diffuser camera, left the Merlot bottle untouched, watered the roses, then placed a printed copy of her legal claim on the kitchen island. With it, a sticky note. "I wasn't part of your brand. I was the reason your life functioned. Now you'll learn to live without the silence you took for granted." She walked outside just as Trent pulled into the driveway. He rushed out, looked at her bags. "You're really going?" She smiled softly. "You didn't think I'd stay after being turned into a dataset, did you?" He hesitated. "Can I help you move?" She nodded. Not out of forgiveness, but recognition. He wanted to carry something now, even if it was late. Elaine's new home was a small, ivy-covered cottage on the edge of town. It smelled of cedar and lemon balm. The landlord, Eleanor, a widow in her 70s, offered fresh muffins on the first day and said, "You're not just renting space here, you're restoring it." Elaine didn't cry until that night, when she heard the silence. Not the kind that stalked you, but the kind that held you. She filled the rooms slowly. Books by memory, not genre. Photos she hadn't framed in years. A knitted blanket over the armchair. She played Bach in the afternoons and sang to herself in the mornings. She wasn't healing on someone else's schedule anymore. She was living. 1 week later, a courier delivered an envelope to Camille's front porch. No return address. Inside were 3 photos. Elaine watering the roses, Elaine staring into the hallway lens, Elaine's empty guest room, bed neatly made, lamp unplugged. On the back of the last photo, in tidy script, a single line. "I left quietly. That was my last courtesy." If you've ever walked away not to flee, but to reclaim your breath, type 4. That's strength, not weakness. 2 days later, Camille opened her laptop to check her email. A new file had appeared in her desktop folder. Footage encrypted. ElaineFinal.move. There was no sender, no explanation, just one line embedded in the video's opening frame. "You weren't the only one recording." Camille froze, and for the first time, she felt watched.